All right, well, welcome everybody to our Slack training. It is 7:02 on December 15th, 2020, year one of the plague. And I'm real excited because we're gonna learn how to use this terrific tool for team collaboration. And Heather Nelson is going to lead the training, and then we are recording this. So I will send out a follow-up email probably tomorrow with a link to the recording for anybody who wants to watch it again, or if you want to share it with other folks in your group, you are welcome to do that. So I'm going to be monitoring the chat, and Heather just asked, put your questions and comments in the chat. I'll keep an eye on them, and I am going to turn it over to Heather. So Heather, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Anne. So welcome everyone. Before we kind of get into some of the materials that are created, I'm just curious what experience you've had with Slack. Can you raise your hand in your camera or give me one of the signs on screen if you've used Slack before? Okay, so Brian and Dawn, Patricia and Zachary. Okay, so some people have experience with it. To some others, it looks like it's probably a new tool. So, you know, one of the best ways I think to learn a new tool is to get tips from your friends and colleagues. So feel free to share any ideas that you have or tips that you have in chat, and we'll make this more of a dialogue than a one-way conversation. So first is, what is Slack? It's a really it describes itself as a collaboration tool. So it's a shared channel-based platform for communicating across teams. So it was designed to take a lot of conversations and a lot of work that tends to happen in email out of email and put it into a common place where folks can search for things more easily, find things more easily, and share kind of specific information in these channels rather than just a general email. So our hope is that you find that by using Slack, it reduces the amount of email and helps you be more efficient as you're working with your American Promise chapter, or really anybody that is using Slack. So to get started, I think the first thing you want to do is you've got to set up an account at slack.com. So that's the very first thing to do. And when you log into, I'm going to close the screen so I can see my own slides. When you log into slack.com, you'll see a sign up button in the top right-hand corner under Getting Started. The second thing, for the North Texas Slack workspace, you'll need to contact Anne via American Promise NTX@gmail.com to get an invitation to join our workspace. So that's really what it means by getting started. So Brian, I see your question there. We'll talk a little bit about threads and following threads and where to put replies. So thanks for putting your comment in there. I'll come back to that when we get to talking about threads. So there's a couple of different ways to use Slack, and you see Brian in his comment, he talks about the desktop client. That is also sometimes referred to as the app. I was dating myself earlier when I saw the word app. I think of an app as something on a phone, but now some of these desktop clients are also called apps. You can also just access it through an internet browser where it's not sitting on your computer, but it's out on the internet. And then there also are Slack apps that you can use on your phone or your tablet. So my tip here is get used to logging in to Slack when you turn on your computer, when you sit down to do computer work, and checking it regularly. And I'll tell you in a minute kind of how you can easily find what's new in the different channels. So Slack has its own lingo. So you're going to hear me refer to a couple of these words. One is workspace, and that's really kind of where the work gets done. So at American Promise North Texas, we have an American Promise North Texas workspace, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. Channels are, if you think about it like a channel on your TV, you go to a different channel on your TV to see a different show. The channels are kind of where you post and read messages specific to a topic. So we have channels for letters to the editor, and we have a channel for Texas 24 congressional district. So the number of channels is unlimited, but to help us all manage our information overload, then right now we've got Ann kind of managing how to set up channels. A message. Basically, a message is just that. It's information. It can be shared through a channel, or it can be shared directly through a DM or a direct message, which is a way to contact one person or contact many people and start a conversation with them directly. So I skipped over thread. Let me explain what thread is. So a thread is really a series of messages. Starts with an initial message and then responses that are specific to that message. If you're reading the question in chat, there was a question about how to reply to a message. You know, typically if you reply to a message in the thread, then it groups all the replies together and makes it easier for others to follow that thread. And then there's a tag. So a tag is a way of notifying either everybody who's signed up for a channel or specific individuals that the message you're posting may pertain to them, or you want to draw their attention to it. So you do that by using the @ sign and their name, and pre-populate, and that will notify them. Okay, so this is probably a good time to talk about notifications and setting up your preferences. In a minute, I'll go over to our Slack workspace and show you where some of this is in the workspace. But up in the top right-hand corner, you will see either your initial or a picture of yourself if you've posted that. And if you click on your picture, you get a menu that's over there on the left-hand side. And one of the options on that menu is preferences. So when you click on preferences, you then see a list of things that come up. And the very first one is notifications. So preferences will really help you establish how information gets sent to you via Slack. There's a lot to modify in preferences, but I think the top 5 things that I would recommend you get started with are, first one is around notifications. And we'll go in and I'll show you kind of how to set up those notifications. The sidebar, you can kind of configure what your sidebar looks like and the order in which you see information, such as channels or DMs. You can create kind of your own color scheme. For me, and I have a couple of workspaces, my color scheme is kind of a purple color, but if you prefer orange or yellow or blue, you can set that up and set up kind of how, what the look and feel of your workspace is. Certainly you can set language and region so that message timestamps are specific to you. And then there's also under accessibility, the ability to increase message zoom size so you can enlarge the font a little bit. So let me go in. Actually, I'm going to share my desktop so we can actually go into Slack. Can everybody see my desktop right now? Can you, you should be seeing something that looks like Slack?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the things I was just talking about are, you see up here in the top right-hand corner is my name and my picture. So when I click on that, I'll move the chat down. When I click on that, then that's where I see the ability to set my preferences. And when I click on preferences, then the other menu comes up. So let's talk a little bit about notifications. I'm set up here on the American Promise workspace to be notified about all new messages. And that's because, you know, we're kind of getting this workspace up and going. I'm curious what people are putting out there. So I want to be notified anytime somebody puts a message out there. Now I don't have, you see over here on the left, I actually have 4 different workspaces that I work in Slack. I don't have all of them set up that way. The one I use at work, I check it a couple of times a day, so I elected not to get any notifications. So for that workspace, if you have multiple workspaces, you can configure your preferences differently based on which workspace you're in. I've also set it up here to notify me about replies to threads that I'm following. And so anytime I post a message, I'm automatically following that thread and I get notified of replies to that. One thing, one pro tip I want to give folks is, excuse me, down here at the very bottom of notifications, there's a box, and I think it's down here at the bottom for a reason, because part of Slack's mission is to actually get people out of their email. So if you wanted to be notified by email of when direct messages or things were posted, you could do that, but that's just going to clutter up your email. So Susie's got a question, does Slack look same and have all the same options on the phone? It looks very similar. It's designed slightly differently for a smaller screen, but I believe you're able to do all these same things over the phone as you are on the computer, but it might look slightly differently. Okay. And Brian, your comment, you sent me a question about seeing something slightly different. I am using the desktop app. So if you're using mobile, it might look slightly different if you're accessing Slack via a browser. So what other questions do y'all have about kind of setting up, I'll go back to the PowerPoint, setting up preferences in the sidebar and things like that? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Let me go back and look at Brian's question, see if I can capture all of it. Okay. So,
let's see, you want this in the chat.
Yeah, or just go ahead and ask it if you have a question. You can ask it.
My question is this: I tend to get overwhelmed by these systems, just organizationally. Is there a way? Is there a way that you have when you read the thread or you add something to it that you need to move it to another file, or what happens there, or does the thread just stay organized in a way that you can find it easily?
Let me pull up an example, since we've got questions of threads. Let me pull up an example of a thread and show you what that looks like. So right now, let me minimize the chat. You guys should see essentially my screen divided into 3 columns. On the left-hand side is what's called the sidebar. So part of some of those preferences that you can set, I can reorder how I want all the channels that I have access to in the sidebar. Or certain ones I can make them favorites so they show up at the top. I can also select what shows up here at the top. If I click on more, I can add more things to show up there, like a file browser. So I think, Susie, for folks who are like, whoa, where do I even get started? I would recommend kind of start small. Don't sign up for a bunch of channels if you really don't think you're going to read them, because that's going to add to your sidebar over here. And then also set up your preferences so that the information that you're most interested in is the information that you get notified about.
Okay.
So the next thing you see in the middle of the screen, these are messages. So there was a question about, how do messages basically get out there? somebody will post a message. Anne posted this message in the middle about this book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, and that it was, you know, part of the American Promise Book Club on December the 2nd. So she typed that up. She did it by, down here on the bottom is a area to send a message to everybody who's subscribed to the book's channel. And then over here on the right, you can also see it says 2 replies, view thread. If I click on that view to see the replies show up over on the right-hand side. And so that's the thread. The thread is the original message and anybody that has replied to the thread. The way you reply to a thread, if you hover over the top right-hand corner of a message, this little menu comes up. You can add a reaction, and then the second little icon there, the little talking bubble, is reply to the thread.
So Heather Marie has posted in the chat, pointed out that in the sidebar, if you click on threads, that shows all the threads you have replied to.
Fabulous. Good tip. Thanks, Marie.
Oh.
So we'll talk a little bit more about messages in a minute. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about channels. And let me get back and make this a little bigger so you guys, can you guys see the PowerPoint now?
No.
Yes.
Okay. So,
oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. I'm still seeing your Slack.
I'm seeing your Slack too.
okay.
There we go. Something just happened.
Now we see PowerPoint. Now we got it.
I can toggle back and forth. So the channels, as I mentioned, a channel is really designed to focus a conversation on a specific topic. And we have set it up so that everybody who's a member of our workspace has access to books, and channels are always started with a hashtag. So the books channel, events, general, team LTE for letters to the editor, random, and then also Zoom Slack tips. If you want to browse all the channels and see what other channels are out there that you may want to join, which means they will show up in your sidebar over here and you'll be notified of messages in them, you just click on the little plus mark that's next to channels, and that will show you what's called, I think, like the channel directory or channel selector. And it'll open up a window. And then you can see, for me, I'm a member of Texas 24. That's my district. I've joined that channel. There are 2 members to Texas 04. And this join button shows up on the right-hand side for me. So if I wanted to join that channel, I could, but I've chosen not to because, you know, I've got the districts that I'm interested in, that I'm following, that are relevant to my neighborhood. And so I don't want to follow a conversation that doesn't really pertain to me. The other thing, let's see what's next on channels. We also have custom channels. So custom channels are ones that not everybody has been added to, but Anne has kind of taken on herself to put people in these custom channels. And as I mentioned, we can add, if we start, let's say we're getting ready to go to conference and we're trying to plan our business around what meetings we're going to schedule, we may want to add a channel for that. So we have one for Business for American Promise, and that's called Team-Business. We have one for public speaking, for coordinating and making presentations. And then we have one for the different districts. So Susie's question, so the channels are from other groups too. These channels are specific to our American Promise workspace.
Oh, they are, okay. So they're all these are all options within American Promise.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, specifically American Promise North Texas.
Yeah, specifically North Texas. So all those other Slack workspaces that I'm a member of, if I want to see the channels for those, I have to go click on those, and
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't cross them over, it doesn't blend them, which I find really nice.
Yeah, that would be pretty confusing.
Okay, let's talk about how you talk to people. You know, you want to kind of think about who do you want to talk to and what do you want to talk about, because that's going to determine, are you going to be, you know, where should your conversation take place? Does it take place in a channel or does it take place in a direct message? So the tips we have here for channels, you want to post a message in a channel. If you do that, it's going to be available to all members of that channel. You can tag specific people so that they get notified. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Everybody can see, everybody in the channel can read and reply to the message, but only the tagged people are notified. And then if you use the tag @channel, it notifies members of the channel. A direct message is really kind of a one-on-one or a small group conversation. So only the people who you are direct messaging can see that message. Let's say, so Anne and I, for example, we did a lot of direct messages about these materials and what we thought we needed to cover. We did all of that in Slack. Let me go into Slack and show you a little bit what that looks like. Okay, so over on your sidebar, again on the left, you guys should be seeing my Slack.
Right.
You'll see the ability to send direct messages. So these are all the members of our Slack who show up here. And as more people join, we'll have more team members added. If I want to, there's a couple ways I can send a direct message to somebody. I can click on the plus sign here and open a direct message with someone. So it's going to open a window. I type their name in the top and it will allow me to start a message. So if I want to send a message to Anne, then I pull that up. I could also add other people here. I could add, just for kicks, I'm going to add Beverly. So you can see I've added a message to Anne and Beverly. And I type my message down at the bottom. Hi, how do you think training is going? And they'll be able to reply to that. Marie has a comment. If you don't tag anyone in the channel message, no one is notified unless they see it as they are browsing. True, or unless they've set up notifications to be notified every time somebody posts a message. So some people may have their notifications set up. I believe, I think if you want to draw somebody's attention to a message, I think it's probably a good idea to tag them. So you also have the ability up here in the top left of your sidebar to see all the DMs that you've been that you've been engaged with. So for example, there was one I wanted to show people. I think it was this one. So here on Tuesday, December 1st, Anne sent a message to, you can see up at the top who it was sent to Beverly, Dave Jones, Joan, and myself. And it was about, let's get availability for a meeting with Marnie. So she posted a document that wanted us to put our availability in it. And then she tagged, you see she tagged Joan, Heather, Beverly, and Dave. So we would be notified of that message and know that she was asking us to go do something. So that's another, I think, important point about messages is you can add a lot of things in a message. Let me go back to some of the ones Anne and I have done, and you'll see a couple of what we call thumbnails here. So here's a link to a document on the training topics. This was kind of the outline that Anne developed for us to start this training. And then later down here, you can see where I've sent her back she sent me the slide template to use. And I believe even later I've sent her copies of the slides. So to do that, as you are typing your message to Anne, You will then come down, you see a bar across the bottom. You could format your fonts if you want. You could hyperlink to a URL. Over here on the far right, you can attach a file. So you can attach PDF, PowerPoint, Word. So that's one way to attach it. And when you click on that, it'll ask you if you're attaching something from a Google Drive or from your computer. So that's another, I think, great collaboration tool for Slack, is the ability to share files back and forth. If if you're like me and your email is just awful, then this is a way to go find materials and resources. So you guys probably saw that little thing pop up in the lower right-hand corner when Ann sent a reply to my message and said it's going great. That is my notification, and that will show up not just when I'm in Slack, but if I was in, my email app, or if I was in PowerPoint, or I was out on a website, it would still show up in the right-hand corner.
So Joan posted in the chat, I cannot see your cursor. Joan, I see Heather moving the arrow around. Can you see that? You want to unmute and tell us if you're still having trouble seeing her arrow?
I'll do a better job of kind of verbally telling where my cursor is. So Joan, okay. If you've seen, for example, maybe a little black pop up at the bottom where it says attach file, my cursor is hovering over that paper clip. Okay, let's go back to the slides, and then let me get through the slides, and then we'll kind of go into.
Okay, and Patricia has a question. Patricia, do you want just to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. So I have a lot of workspaces because I belong to several groups. So I chose no notifications. So when somebody tags me, the only way I'm going to know that, right, is if I'm on Slack. Is that right?
I think if someone tags you, you're notified anyway.
Okay. I guess I've never seen anybody notify me, but it might be because I just didn't do that. I don't know.
So Heather, can you pull up that preferences screen? Because I believe there is an option for no notifications. And Patricia, it's possible that that's the setting that you have chosen.
Right. Yeah, I chose that only because some of those
nothing
were active.
Yeah. So if you say notify me about nothing, then even, if I tag you, you're not going to get a notification. Now, when you look at Slack, you'll see the DM in bold white, and that will give you a visual indication that there's a message waiting for you.
Okay.
But if you tell it no notifications, you're not going to get any.
Right. I thought that, but I wasn't sure because some of the groups I'm on are so busy, and then they have WhatsApp and they have other things.
Yeah.
It just gets crazy. You're trying to catch up with email, Slack, WhatsApp, and another one I can't even think of the name of.
So one of the things I've done, Patricia, is on this desktop client, I actually had 2 other Slack channels here, and I removed them because they're not things I'm active in right now. So if I wanted to re-add them, I would just go back to add workspace and search for them, or ask their administrator to send me an invite, and I could add them back to my workspace. So that's another thing I do to kind of just manage my intake of information. So Ann, I'm going to ask you to post a message in one of the channels, please. Let's show folks how that it turns bold white when a new message is out there.
Okay.
So you just saw on my screen that the events channel, now the channel label is bolded and it just stands out a little bit more. That is my clue when I come into Slack that there's a new message there that I have not viewed yet. And if you are using Slack on your desktop and on your phone, it can tell. So if I view this on my desktop, when I go in on my phone, it will not be viewed. So once I go in and view the message, Anne's new message here, we've got a lot of upcoming events, it unbolds and it takes that bolding off the channel label. So that now tells me I don't have any new messages in that channel to read. Same thing happens with direct messages. So yeah, to Marie's point, if Patricia wants no notifications, then the @mentions and reactions up here, up at the top, in the top of the sidebar, will be bolded for her when she goes in. And Susie, that's the whole idea. Yes, we would definitely like our communication in here. So yeah, I mean, we have a log of it then, and it's searchable. You can go back and find it a lot more easily later. Last thing I'm going to mention about messages is you can save items. So as you're viewing a message, let me give you an example. If you're viewing a message, if you hover again over it, so that menu comes up in the top right, you see a little kind of, I don't know, ribbon. And if you click on that, and it saves that message, and that will also show up in the top up here under saved messages. So that's one way. If you have something you need to remind yourself of later, you need to come back and do, you know you're going to need to find it. It's kind of like a little file cabinet for you. Okay, let's get back to the slides. Okay. Reading and responding, I think I kind of just talked through most of this, but that little menu at the top right-hand corner just gives you lots of great ways to respond to messages. The first is a little smiley there, a little emoticon, and that's a great way to just tell somebody, hey, I got it, thumbs up, I like it, you know, give them a heart. If you click on that menu, you see a wide range of emojis you can use to acknowledge a message. The second one, the little speaker bubble, is where you reply in the thread, and then the saved messages. So a couple tips about messages, since that's where most of the stuff happens in Slack. You can edit or delete a message you compose. So if you write something and then decide that that's not what you want to say, or you want to take that typo out that accidentally got in there, you can go back and edit your message, but you cannot edit anybody else's message. You can attach a document. And to Joan's question, will the attachments be saved as well? So the way that Slack is set up is they give you a certain amount of space, and you can use that space. And then once you have reached your maximum size of your workspace, they will not let you access older messages. So if those attachments are in older messages, once our workspace gets so large, if we're sharing a lot of documents or a lot of photos, then we may not be able to get access to them unless we go pay for the professional version. So my recommendation is if there's a document that you think you want to work on, save it to your computer. Or I noticed that what what Anne has done is she's actually linking to a lot of the documents that are out on our Google Drive anyway. So you have access to them there. She's just kind of pointing you to the document. When you insert a link to a web page, Slack will automatically kind of create a thumbnail image of that web page. And then a hyperlink, I'm going to show you guys in a minute what a hyperlink is. It's basically a way to take a word, and if you've ever seen a word that is underlined and you click on it and it takes you to a web page, that's a hyperlink on that word. So I will show you how to do that. So Brian's question, do I understand there is no location within Slack for files similar to Google Drive, but File Browser will bring up a list of files to attach to any public message? Yes, Brian, that's exactly how it works. So we're not using, you know, our Google Drive is where we store our documents that we use regularly, like our American Promise presentation, but we may link to it in these messages so people know what document we're talking about. I learned this tip of DMing yourself a draft message from Anne as we were pulling this together. So you can send a message to yourself. And that's a great way to kind of, if you've got thoughts that you know are going to go into a message later, put them down in a DM to yourself so you don't lose them. And then you can pull it out later and copy it into a message. As you're typing messages, if you hit enter, it is going to post and submit the message. So if you're trying to do what in my typing class they call the carriage return, where you want to go to a new line in your message, then you want to hit Control plus enter. That's probably the thing that I think people struggle to remember the most, is the difference between enter and Control plus enter. Bottom line, if you accidentally hit enter, you can always go back and edit it, or you can put 2 messages out there, and we're not gonna kill you if you do that. That's okay. It's not the end of the world if you put 2 messages out there. And then pinned messages. You also have the ability to pin a message, and let me show you how those can be found. Okay, let's go learn how to do hyperlinks and pinned messages. Okay, I'm going to show pinned messages first, and then I'll come back to hyperlinks. So pinned messages show up a couple of different ways. They kind of have a little banner behind them, so they're a different color. You can see there's a message here in the middle for upcoming events from Anne, and it says that it's pinned. And it's also got this like kind of yellow background. I can also click on the pin up here right under the channel header under events, and it says view pinned items, and that will pull up over in my right hand column all the pinned messages that I might need to see. So that's a great way to just kind of, you know, Anne's kind of an advanced user. Well, she pins documents, or she pins messages, she unpins messages. And that's, I think, part of what makes Slack effective is as you're putting your information out there, kind of thinking, how do I want people to remember things and find things? It's a great collaboration tool for that, to be thinking about your audience as you're putting your message out there.
So Heather, I just unpinned the notification about tonight's Slack training. So you'll see now in the events channel, there is only 1 pinned message.
Yeah, awesome. You can see a couple of other things while we're here in the events channel. You can, up here, kind of at the header of the channel, you see this number 31 and some pictures that says who's a member of the channel. If you wanted to know whether people were getting your message, you could click on that and see all the members of the channel. And then there's also kind of this information and details. You can also see them over here. You know, you can find something in the events channel. It's like a search function. There's even the ability to start a call through Slack. If you need one other way to be getting phone calls, that's kind of, we'll put that in the 2nd level training that we do next on Slack, because that's pretty advanced.
Where's the search area? That's something I do all the time when I'm looking for stuff. Is it there to the right?
There's a couple of search areas. Susie, if you notice at the very top in the purple, what in my computer is purple, you can search the whole workspace by putting them in there.
Okay.
So if I search Slack training, I have the option to search messages, files, and more for everything related to Slack training. And that's using that search bar up at the top. And then if you are in a channel, let me close this out. If you're in a channel and you click on this information icon to show the channel details, there is the option to find. So that's where I can narrow my search to just something in events. Yeah, we love our search function.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let me talk about how to create hyperlinks to long URLs. So I am typing a message to Anne, and I want to link to a website. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to the website, and I don't think you guys are going to see all of this, but if I go to the website, if I go to americanpromise.net and I copy the URL and I go into Slack, I'm going to highlight the word message, and then I'm going to click on what's called link. It's like two chains linked together, and it brings up a pop-up window. So I then paste my URL in the field that says link. The part that it's linked to is message, and I hit save. And now in my message, it changes the font color. And then when you hover over it, you can see, Anne will be able to see that it is it's linked.
Cool.
Did that answer your question, Brian? Hope so. Let me know if it didn't. Okay. So let's get back to the slides. Okay. So we've talked about all these message tips, and we really want to plug this events channel. And the reason we want to do that is because we've got a lot going on. You can just see, look, in January, we've already got something on January 4th, January 5th, and January 12th. So posting those events in the events channel helps people, you don't have to go find the email. We've hyperlinked where it says register here. So you can now register for all those things right out of Slack, and you don't even need to keep track of all those emails. So here's another example where register for the Zoom meeting is a hyperlink. It shows up in blue. So that's just a great way for us to keep track of upcoming meetings and trainings and some of our other events. And I've talked about both of these, sending a DM to yourself and trying to avoid email notifications. So keeping in mind that keeping those, keeping Slack open when you're on your computer will help you manage the information. There's a couple of reference tools that I just want to point out because this is one of those things that you will learn more about using Slack the more you use it. But if you want to study up ahead of time, then out on the Slack website on their resources page, there's what they call the Help Center. So there's lots of walkthroughs and tips for how to use Slack. They've got a few videos out there. Slack also has a channel on YouTube where they've put some short video tutorials, like 30 and 45 seconds. So that's a great place to go find information about how to use Slack. And then we've got our own channel called Zoom Slack Tips. So as you learn something new, just put it in there and you will help educate all of us on how to best use Slack. So those are our resources. And then, I know some of you, not all of you are from North Texas. So if you're thinking about using Slack or you are getting Slack up and running for your chapter, contact Anne. If you want a copy of these materials, you're welcome to take these and use them with your chapter too. So we aim to share.
And I will also upload it to our chapter's G Drive and share the link tomorrow on the group's IO channel for those of you who are active in that. I'll send y'all a message with a link so you guys can download this recording. So Heather, are we just opening up for questions for a few minutes?
Yeah, let's open up for questions. We can go into Slack and show you guys some things. I'll pull my Slack back up. So fire away. What questions do y'all have? How are you feeling about using Slack? It can be intimidating getting new technology.
Well, I'm always the gal that when I call the helplines, I'm like, you need to know I don't understand any of this. That's usually how I open the conversation. But you know, it can be a bit intimidating, frankly. But I'm sure that if I mess around with it long enough, I'll figure it out.
I think one of probably the biggest differences in how Slack differs from email is in email, you have one place where all your messages come in to one place and all your messages go out from one place. In Slack, what you're thinking about is what do I want to talk about? Does it pertain to one of these channels? You know, is it about an event? Is it about Business for American Promise? Is it about public speaking? And you put your message there. So you're kind of pre-filing those messages for everybody else, and you're kind of filtering them so they can find the information a little bit more easily. So you kind of have to think about, what do I want to talk about? And that's going to tell you kind of what channel to put it in. And then that's random. Every Slack workspace has random, which I think is kind of like a little joke from Slack. They think it's funny to do random, but that is your catch-all. If you don't know where it goes, just put it in random, and we will all work together to figure out how to catalog some of these messages. Joan, I'm happy to show you, if you want to stay on, I'll show you how to do a hyperlink. I think you're on mute, Joan. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, your cursor was disappearing down in my screen every time you talked about how to create a link. So I couldn't see it.
Stay on and show you.
All right.
What other questions do folks have about Slack?
So Heather, this is Joanna. I use my iPhone for, you know, it's like my daily computer. Everywhere I go, my little phone goes. So is there, like, I'm not sure how to open Slack so that it stays open on the phone. Like, what do I do, or how does that work?
Well, I think, so do you have Slack loaded on your phone?
I think I do.
So I think you want to make sure you get the app for the phone.
Yeah.
You're not going through your browser.
Yeah.
And once you do that, then if you, because when I go in, it doesn't ask me for a password every time I go in. So I'm able to just open the app on my phone and get to all my channels. Does anybody else know?
Yeah, Heather, I have an iPhone and I do the same thing. I use the app for Slack on my iPhone, and I just touch it a few times a day to check it. Now, I also get notifications on my iPhone. I'm wondering if you can go back to the notification settings, because there is a setting in there about notification when, go into preferences, yeah.
Oh.
And then scroll down a little bit. Let's see, did you talk about the notification schedule? So, you know, hours when you want to.
Yeah, you can right here in the middle of the screen, you can set yourself up to only get notifications during certain hours.
Yeah.
So you don't want Slack firing up your phone, you know, all those
2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But if you'll scroll down a little bit more, Heather, okay, this. Oh, no, go a little bit more. When I'm not active on desktop, send notifications to my mobile devices. Would you pull that drop-down menu down, please?
So what this is saying is you can, so if you're always getting notifications on your phone, then you probably have immediately, even if I'm active, checked.
Yeah.
So I have as soon as I'm inactive. So what this does is it sends notifications to my phone if I am not active on the desktop app.
So that's what I'm wondering, if Joanna needs to check that setting, because if she's using her phone as her primary Slack tool, then she
Mhm.
wants notifications going to her phone. And is that what she needs to check on, to click on?
That would be my recommendation. And you could, it doesn't have to be as soon as you're inactive. You could set it for a time frame here. That way, if you're out there and have your phone with you all the time, but you don't want to get, messages every second, then I would select it. I would give yourself a time frame here, and that way, you've got a buffer from when you shut down your computer till your notifications start coming up on your phone.
Okay, so this assumes that I am going to have a computer where I've got Slack on my computer so that it can kind of monitor that and then send things to my phone, right?
Well, it is basically, if you never log in on your computer to Slack, it's just always going to send it to your phone because it's never going to be as active on the.
Okay.
Brian has a question.
Brian, what's your question? I'm not hearing.
Yeah, Brian, we're not hearing you. I tell you what, Brian, if you can type your question in the chat, I think that might be better. Beverly asks, are messages and threads deleted from channels after a certain time, or if the channel has too much material?
And if the entire workspace gets too large, then the older messages, they are not deleted, but they are inaccessible to the members of the workspace. So for us to be able to keep everything indefinitely, we would have to pay for that. I'm sure if anybody wants to underwrite it, then Anne would be happy to talk to you about that. But
Salesforce is about to buy them, so the price is going up.
probably. So, so if you think about it, like they will go away from your view. So if the workspace gets too large, then we will not have the ability to see some of our messages.
Right. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Brian asks, what option do I have to read a thread on the right-hand sidebar?
I don't. Let me close some of these.
Why don't you go find, one of the threads, like there was, the thread in books or.
So I'm in events right now. Actually, let me go to books because
I don't know if we have any thread. Okay, click on that thread in books. Yeah.
So we'd have a sample. So this is kind of like. Sorry about that. This is kind of like the 2-column view where the thread, it just is going to show the main messages here in this channel. If there are any replies, then they show up down here, but they're not viewable. You have to click on that to view it. And then the message shows up over here. The whole thing shows up on the right-hand side. So that's one reason why we're really hoping people will reply to threads. So you could go see everything there is to say about, people have had to say about reclaiming our democracy in one thread, and you're not having to scroll through the main messages to find everything. But I believe if you wanted to always see a message in thread, I think you can only see it over on the right-hand side if there's a reply to it. That's what it's looking like to me. Pull that chat back up. And Dawn has a comment out here that it looks like references and notifications are separate on the mobile app. So sounds like, Dawn, you can set up your notifications on your mobile app separately. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I mistyped it. I meant to type preferences.
Preferences.
So whereas on the desktop, it's notifications are under preferences.
And where do you see the ability to set up your preferences on the mobile?
Heather, I think you click on the on my iPhone, the lower right-hand corner, it says you. And
Yeah.
when I click on you, then my profile comes up, and it says there's a notifications and there's a preferences
Yep.
and some other things.
And it says on mobile, notify me about all new messages, direct messages, or nothing. So, and then you can also set it up to notify me on mobile always, even when I'm active, as soon as I'm inactive. So as soon as I'm off the desktop or after I've been idle on desktop.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that tip, Dawn. That's helpful. Marie has a great suggestion here that hovering on icons gives good hints of various functions. Yes, learn to hover. That's a good tip, because you see more menus, you can see different options that you have. And this is also kind of the way these companies are developing these technology tools. They tweak them all the time. So there may be something new tomorrow that we will all be learning about.
How exciting. I just want to learn the basics.
Awesome.
All right, well, I just DM'd you, Heather.
I think you put it in events.
I actually did put it in events. It wasn't a DM.
Yep, there it is. So she just replied. She replied to her own message about. Yeah. Thank you. You guys are welcome. I'm happy to help. And if you've got any other questions, I can stay on for a few more minutes and answer them.
Okay. Well, I think it's 7:58, so I'm going to call it an official end to the training and stop the recording. But I will send out a follow-up email tomorrow with a link so you guys can download this recording and watch it again. And thanks to everybody, both in North Texas and leaders around the country who joined us tonight. I really hope everybody enjoys using Slack as much as I have enjoyed using it. And I'm looking forward to using it with our North Texas teamwork. Please keep an eye on that events list. We got lots of stuff coming up, including our monthly chapter meeting, which we're gonna try doing it on the third Tuesday every month, starting in January. So I will be updating the events channel with links to register for, Zoom, as long as we're continuing to do everything by Zoom. We're also going to be forming teams for our Business for American Promise chapter and our Texas Legislative Resolution project. So if you're interested in either one of those projects, go ahead and click on that channels, that plus button on channels, and put yourself in the channel so that when we post information about an upcoming meeting and activity on that project, that you get that notification. So with that, I'm gonna say thank y'all for coming. Have a good evening. I'll stop the recording, but as long as Heather wants to hang around and answer questions, we'll keep it going. Thanks very much.
Thank you.